2, check 1, 2. Okay. Mr. Bear said you were going to, okay.
Yeah.
You guys squeezed and Mr.
So we all moved up a notch.
I think that clock might be about a minute slow.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the September 14th, 2021 Flagler County Planning and Development Board meeting. At this time, we'll go ahead and take the roll call.
Michael Boyd advised us he would be out this evening. Timothy Connor. Here. Jack Corbett.
Here.
Mike Goodman also advised us he would be out this evening. Mark Langello. Anthony Lombardo.
Here.
And Fernando Melendez.
Here.
And with 4, we do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and pledge to the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first up on the agenda, we'll be looking for a motion to approve the August 10th, 2021 regular meeting minutes. Do I have a motion for approval or any discussion? Motion to approve.
I'll make a motion, we approve the minutes.
I'll second it.
All right, we have one motion to approve and a second. All in favor of approving the meeting minutes?
Aye.
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 No nays? All right, we do ask everyone to follow the quasi-judicial process for this meeting. The meeting will be limited to staff for a 10-minute presentation, applicant 15-minute presentation. Public comment will be 3 minutes per speaker, 5 minutes if the speaker's on behalf of a group. And then we'll have a applicant rebuttal and closing staff comments for 10 minutes each. First application on our agenda is application 3259. This is a quasi-judicial requiring disclosure and an ex parte communication. Have anyone had discussions with anyone in regards to this application? Neither have I. This application is for special use in the agricultural district. I'll turn it over to staff for their comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The request is for a special use in the AC district for a solar farm. It's 155 acres, more or less. It's part of a larger parcel, and this lies right on the county line. I'll show you here in just a moment its location. A solar farm is a major utility installation and would be permitted then through a special use process. And those special uses are permitted in any zoning district with a recommendation from the Planning and Development Board, approval by the Board of County Commissioners. The Planning and Development Board, in its deliberations and in its decision, may recommend approval of conditions, denial, or table the request. Tabling then would be for specific information that was not included in the initial application. So here's that graphic showing where this proposed solar farm will be located. It's right along the county line, just south of the St. Johns County line. And it would adjoin a site in Putnam County, which would be the substation portion of this. So you'll have solar farm on both sides of the line, and then more of the distribution transmission infrastructure located within Putnam County on the west side of the county line here. You'll see that on the site plan. Here's our land use, our zoning graphic shows the property as agriculture. Correction, land use. Keep getting that wrong. That's in the packet. And then here's our zoning, agriculture zoning throughout. So that going back to that, you did have a small portion of conservation at the south end, but that's on the land use, and that is not part of this subject area for the special use request, agriculture zoning. And then flood zone, as I've been providing before, a very limited portion of the site there to the north, and that should correspond outside of the proposed solar farm area. You do see some soil types and some wetlands that are indicative of a wetland delineation that's indicative of wetland areas. So between your soils that are typically found where wetland areas are shown, and then our presumptive map from the National Wetlands Inventory showing these areas. There are some mapped wetlands that are on the property, and those will be avoided to the extent practicable, and they've submitted as part of their site plan that those would have the required 25-foot upland buffer adjacent to those. So here's that site plan portion from your packet. You can see the areas on both sides of the county line. So that light blue portion to your left-hand side is the part in Putnam. You see the county line delineated running generally through the middle of your page. And then you have the portion here, the 155 approximate acres that are set aside for development. That blue area is the area of the actual panels themselves where those will be installed. And then the green areas being your wetlands and your buffers that are being set aside. The entire area to be fenced. This is the detail from that same plan. And you have some limited aggregate pathways that I think is probably safest thing to call those. They're not roads. They're intended for limited maintenance access that would be to the site. And so that very limited nature of its hardscape, that you have these panels that are installed and then bare ground below them. You'll have maintenance access for cutting of vegetation or effectively the chemical treatment if needed, but I think they'd opt for cutting more often. And then the area you see here. And so there's really not a whole lot of infrastructure that's going to be here with this. We asked them about access to the site, and it would be not manned in a regular fashion. Same for the portion in Putnam. This would be something that would just have the periodic maintenance access that would happen. This is one of those things that once it's there, it does its thing. It does what it's supposed to do, and there's very little interaction. We're excited about it because it's a green industry, and so it fits in with this area in the ag district. It's a very compatible use. And so our staff report mainly reflects that review, that what we've done is we've broken out the criteria from the special use portion of the Land Development Code, had the applicant respond to that, had us provide a response to their review of the criteria, and had that submitted in the staff report. And rather than go into those items, just have that provided for the record. And with that, our recommendation, Planning and Development Board recommends the Board of County Commissioners approval of the special use, the installation of the solar facility subject to development consistent with the site plan dated May 11th, 2021. Applicant is present in the chambers along with their consulting staff, and do have a presentation that they'll want to make, and I'll await any questions or comments from the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mangle. Do we have any questions for staff? The applicant like to come up for their presentation?
Good evening. My name is Mark Shelton with Kimley Horn Associates. I'm here today with Erico Lopez, the project manager for Florida Renewable Partners. My address is 12740 Grand Bay Parkway West, Suite 2350, Jacksonville, Florida 32258. And I promise you we'll be brief today. I'd like to thank you for your time tonight to hear about our project and this special use application. I want to thank your staff for helping us with this application. We agree with their report. That was a very thorough report, and their recommendation of approval. We hope that you would see it the same. And with that, I will hand it over to Erico Lopez, who has a very brief presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and esteemed members of the board. My name is Erico Lopez, Senior Project Manager for the FRP Tupelo Solar Development. My address is 700 Universe Boulevard, Juno Beach, Florida. I would like to quickly thank county staff as well as the planning board for affording my team the opportunity to come before you to seek a recommendation of approval for this development special use permit. My team's very happy to be at this stage of the process, but we're also very excited to become a business partner in Flagler County. As you may already know, Florida Renewable Partners is a sister company to FPL. We're both wholly owned and indirect subsidiaries of NextEra Energy, which is based out of Juno Beach, Florida. So NextEra Energy is a clean energy company with more than 47,000 megawatts of generating capacity and projects in 33 states and Canada. And why is this important? Well, it's important because we believe it's good for the county to know who's doing business in the county. We are a company that's been around for 50 years. We have technical expertise in engineering, constructing, and operating large infrastructure projects. And we're nationally recognized for our reputation of completing infrastructure projects in a timely and cost-effective manner. So we're not a fly-by-night developer that's just going to propose something and never build it or leave it on the shelf. These projects have power purchase agreements, and we're ready to build them. So in terms of the solar site, as staff eloquently put it, our entire site is comprised of around 550 acres. The site, as you'll see, is right in the middle between both Putnam County and Flagler County, with the 155-acre portion located in Flagler County. All the access will be off of East End Road and Tupelo Drive on the Putnam side of the project. This project will be comprised of around 261,000 solar panels, and will generate approximately 74.5 megawatts of energy, and will tie into the FPL line directly north of the site. So from a project timeline, our permitting phase, which is what we're in currently, usually takes 3 to 6 months. Construction of the site will be anywhere from 6 to 9 months. We plan on starting construction, hopefully if we attain our permits here tonight, sometime at the beginning of the new year. We'll then have to tie into the grid, and then the site will go online, hopefully within before the end of next year. And the commercial operation will be anywhere from 25 to 35 years for the entire site. Installation of the individual panels really is just comprised of a racking system with these steel pylons put into the ground. We don't put any concrete into this. We just pile these into the ground. That creates the racking system, and then we have the PV installers actually put in the panels, and then they all get connected into the grid. So it's pretty a non-invasive process. From an economic perspective for the county, obviously, we're going to have direct, indirect, and included economic effects. During construction, we're going to have anywhere from 200 and 250 construction workers on site at any point in time. That'll be made up of various craft skills, carpenters, electricians, what have you. We like to hire local. We will post jobs and work with our EPC to post all of our available opportunities in the local publications. And obviously, as a result of having construction workers, we're going to have an increase in hotel and restaurant patronization. So we believe these economic benefits will be beneficial for the county as a whole. And I'll quickly have a 1-minute video that I'll go through the entire site. Just give you kind of more visual aspect of the site. And we believe solar energy centers make great neighbors. These sites are virtually silent. When you actually look at the site from anywhere outside of the site, you won't hear anything with regards to the components of the site, the inverters or anything. It's only when you're actually in the site that you actually hear them. They sound more like a refrigerator operating, and you'll hear that hum. There are no lights at night unless there's any maintenance to the site. In terms of traffic, there is no traffic. We'll have 1 or 2 maintenance crews coming to the site to either fix any inverters or panels or to mow the lawn. We don't use any water. We let God clean the panels with the rain, and so it's really something that we believe these sites are pretty non-invasive. And in particular, these sites currently are a potato farm and timberland. And so essentially all that traffic from all those semis coming down to pick up those potatoes will no longer be there. So the dust effects for the surrounding neighbors will no longer be there. And like I said, this site will be quiet for the next 25 to 35 years. So we believe that for the neighbors, it'll be an added benefit. And that's my presentation. Obviously, I'm here to answer any questions. And on occasion, if there are questions about the goats, on occasion we do bring goats on the sites to eat the grass and take care of that. So that's that point. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? I have a question, but you, Mr. Melendez, you could go ahead.
Are you up and running on the Putnam side?
No, sir. We have not started construction on this particular project in Putnam. No, sir. We do have our permits and approvals, but we have not started construction now.
Okay, the other question I have, how tall are
Yeah,
these panels?
That's a great question. So so these panels are tracking panels, not fixed. So some panels, fixed panels, just stay in one particular kind of angle. These panels actually move with the sun. They track the sun, hence the name tracking panels. So essentially, they'll be 6 feet, kind of pretty much at an angle, and then at the highest peak, probably anywhere from 10 to 12 feet, if they're tipped. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I have one question, then I'll pass to Mr. Langella. So the 25, 35-year lifetime, what happens after that? Do the panels get removed, replaced? How does that work?
Yes, sir, that's a great question. And so at the end of the life of the project, 25, 35 years from now, we may have a more efficient panel that may be able to take half of the land that's there. Or if at the end of the 25 to 35 years, we're still using that land and we want to repower it, we could issue another contract and keep it running. But for the most part, if for some reason the use is no longer needed, like I said, this is a non-invasive construction process. We pull up all those steel pilings and we remove everything, and the land actually gets brought back to either farming use or another use. So yes.
Thank you. Mr. Langella?
Yes, hi. First of all, I like the project, but I do have some questions I want
Yes,
to
sir.
ask you. So you talked about, I think you said 73 megawatts of power.
74.5, yes, sir.
74.5, right. But relate this down to me in a more simpler terms. At any given time or at peak hour, what is the voltage that you're producing, and what is the amount of amps in the facility?
That's
Roughly, just,
Yeah, so our project is capped at 74.5 megawatts throughout.
but I can't relate to my question. That was what, an annual amount of power?
On a
But so I want to know, like, at a moment, if I go out there and aim at the highest peak hour of production, noon, I mean, first of all, are these are 120 volt, or are these 12,000 volt producing? And I know you're gonna, because you're bringing them to high voltage lines.
Yes, sir.
And then you're going to be producing X amount of panels. So what is the amount of wattage? What is the amount of power that this thing will have at any given time?
In terms of volts, I'd have to get back to you on that. I don't know that off the top of my head. But in
Okay.
terms of actual power, I think we're going to be able to power at least 20,000 homes with the amount of energy that comes from this site.
Okay, so
it's-
there'll be an awful lot of power.
Yes, sir.
This
Yes,
is going to be direct current? They'll be producing direct current out of the photovoltaics?
Yes.
And then you're going to have inverters to turning them into AC?
Yes, sir.
And that's all on the property?
Yes, sir.
So here's my question, here's my concern, or whatever, I don't know how you guys
Sure.
handle it. I know these farms exist.
Yes, sir.
I didn't see a fence on the property. Is there a fence on this?
Yes, sir,
property?
there is a
Okay,
security
and
fence.
how high is the fence?
I believe right now it's 6 feet with a 1-foot barbed wire. So
Okay.
7 feet
Which
total.
which can be scaled, and there's nobody
course.
out there, and
Of
there's
course.
definitely hunters and kids and whatever. Of
course.
I'm not as worried about the critters, I'm just talking about human beings. So what protection is there at the inverter site, at the collection site, where all this power is, that somebody doesn't fry themselves in a second?
That's a great question. Frankly speaking, we think safety is of main concern. So we are during the construction process going to have monitors on site. But let's say somebody does come on site and messes with something. We actually have a facility in our Juno Beach offices that will be able to let us know if something is up on site. So it'll alert us. We'll send someone out there, and we'll most likely, hopefully, try to identify what's going on there. But I mean, in terms of, at that moment, like I said, we're not having anybody stationed there, so it's going to be something where it's hopefully the security fence is going to deter that. But like you said, someone could climb
So
it.
if they get to this inverter site, and you had a slide of what looked to be underground pipes that will be taking these tremendous amount of power and then take them somewhere off-site, and that was my other question. But while they're on-site, where that inverter area is there an additional fence? Have you guys ever looked into any additional security around that particular, I mean, at each panel, it's probably a relatively low amount, but as you collect them all and you get to that one site, is there something that would, protect people from, the stupid, the ignorant, from pulling a wire out and hearing this humming and doing something stupid and basically...
Yeah, all the inverters are secured. They're secured within, a locked, I guess, they're all secured within, their aluminum or steel structure. So in order to get in there, someone would have to.
And all the cables to that are all buried or somehow
They're
protected
all
as well?
buried, and then they lead up to the collector yard, which is located in the Putnam County part of the project. Yes, sir. In the northeast portion of that site. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
And have you guys seen on your I went to one of these in North Carolina 2 years ago. It happened to be on a farm that a farmer in this county owns. big farmer, and he owns one up there. And I didn't get it to talk to those guys, but it was vast, it was huge, and there was nobody there, like you said. And I did see a few areas that didn't look all that secure, and that's why it sort of startled me that, well, I know there was a lot of power coming out of there, but it didn't seem to be any security or whatever. Have you guys had any issues with, errant people getting in there and causing any problems?
We have not, but what I would say is during the technical review committee portion of this process, we did listen to both staff and emergency services, and they did say that they would like us to not have as much vegetation around the perimeter of the site, so that if emergency services, police do respond or go to the site, they can see in the site at all points in time. So from that perspective, the county is very much on the same page with you. They want to be able to have clear vision into this site, and luckily it's 155 acres, so for the most part, you'll be able to see right into the site from the perimeter.
And the power that's generated is going to some sort of high voltage transmission lines near the site?
Yes, sir.
That goes underground. Is it underground all the way on your property, or is it going through public roads, or how is it getting from, how are they going from one place to the other?
That's a good question. So it's actually above ground on an easement that we have under control, and it is on the Flagler side going all the way up to the 500K, to the FPL High Line, about a mile north.
So you'll be putting in poles and having them 30 feet or whatever you're going to have up in the air?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yep.
And then I guess, the wetlands or whatever, is there any danger of a short or anything getting into the water and causing any type of, harm to nature, birds and like that? Is there any kind of issue going on with whatever what stuff is buried underneath there?
No, we can't be in the wetlands. So we are held to strict guidelines due to the Department of Environmental Protection, Florida Department of Environmental Protection. We have to basically delineate all these wetlands, which is essentially what's shown there, and we have to have a significant setback with no improvements within those wetlands unless we've, indicated
You're maintaining the
otherwise.
same, like, 25-foot buffer outside of a wetland that
Yes,
normal
sir.
construction does?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Okay, those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you.
I have another question.
Mr. Melendez, go ahead.
So there's no data or any analysis done by your company as far as what he was asking? Any dangers to the surrounding, farm animals or wildlife?
We have not seen anything we have not seen any grounded evidence that any farm animals or anything would be hindered or harmed by a solar energy center being located within or within the proximity of a farm. So we haven't seen that, and a lot of these, as you can imagine, are located in agricultural districts. So we have not seen any grounded evidence to that effect.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Any other questions? I suppose you have signs up, high voltage
Yes,
signs.
we have all kinds of signs, keep out, high voltage. I mean, every type of safety protocol we take into account. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Open it up to public comment now.
Good evening. Greg Blasset, President and CEO of the Palm Coast Flagler Regional Chamber. You may have noticed in your agenda packet, the Chamber issued a letter supporting this project, and we urge you to support it today as well. FPL, and I think their track record speaks for themselves, but they really are a great business partner. We've been working with them behind the scenes, and as you can see from the presentation, they really are doing all of the right things, avoiding the wetlands. And even one cool part of the project, I thought, is that, as it was mentioned earlier, the panels are up off the ground. So in the future, this could potentially go back to farmland if it's interested. It actually gives the land a chance to rest for future use if it's not going to be solar 35 years from now. So I thought that was good. The other thing that didn't come up, but I got a lot of comments from people asking me about this, was that FPL is getting no incentives to do this, right? So we really, for us, this really is a good business partner coming into the county with their environmental hat on, doing the right thing, trying to figure out and really help solve a statewide problem. And that statewide problem is that we're growing exceptionally fast throughout Florida, and so we need to diversify our energy portfolio. If you've ever taken the trip up to Tallahassee and you cut across I-10, you see that huge solar field there on I-10 between Jackson and Tallahassee, and to me, I think it's a pretty cool feat. And I think this vote's really important. I think we need to send a message to FPL, but also others that are watching, to let them know that we're open for business for innovative projects that come forward like this. So really hope and recommend that you support this, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more public comment? If there's no more public comment, we'll go ahead and close public comment. Board discussion or a motion?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'd
Mr.
make a
Langella.
motion that we approve as staff, with staff recommendations.
Is there a second?
I second that motion.
I have a second. Any discussions on that? If not, I call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. So we pass unanimously. Application 3259. The next item on our agenda, it's item number 5. It's a legislative item. We'll go ahead and let staff tell us about it.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. So this is the ordinance now for our Land Development Code amendment to add marinas to Article 3. And so the format you have for this is different from what we had presented at the August 10th meeting. The August 10th meeting was in a strike through and underline in the code text. And so this now has been presented to you as an ordinance would, has been noticed for that, and has been advertised for this meeting, and then advertised for the Board of County Commissioners, assuming that we do have an action that comes from this meeting for 2 readings, October 4th at 9:30 a.m. and October 18th at 5:30 p.m. And so as an amendment to the Land Development Code that changes the actual list of permitted or permissible uses within a zoning district or zoning districts, the Florida statute requires those 2 readings for that. As you saw in the staff report, did very little, I think, to change this, other than Mr. Langello had added, suggested adding the word overnight. I did that in the one portion, I think, where it's relevant there. I can't point it out right now, but it was on the overnight stay there, to try to make the distinction between beings and those activities that we had the discussion on previously. And then also, I did exclude the special exception in the C2 district. And so I wanted to call that out, that we had that as the action for the determination of use in the previous item at the August 10th meeting, but that the item in the discussion on this, I didn't think really reflected that you wanted that to transfer over. If you do want that to transfer over and become either tier 2, tier 3, being a special exception in the C2 zoning district, then you'll need to add that to the text. And so as I've presented the ordinance presently, in the C2 zoning district, these are listed as permissible uses, permitted uses in that C2 zoning district. With that, we've got some additional correspondence. We also have, I think, some interested parties here that have already contacted us about wanting to have more than 3 minutes. I think we've talked with the chair already, and so I'm prepared, if the board's interested in that, since we don't have an applicant per se, that that are speaking on behalf of parties here. I'm comfortable with us allowing, say, 5 minutes for those to speak, and then other members of the public to speak for no more than 3 minutes, consistent with our public hearing process, but certainly defer to the desire of the board and the chair. With that, I'll close, await any questions or comments, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mingle. I'm fine with the 5 minutes. Do we have any questions for staff? Our 5-minute guest would like to come up and give us their presentation. If not, we're going to just go ahead and open it to the public. Yes.
I
was going to reserve my 5 minutes until the public had talked, so
Okay.
we could avoid duplication, and I'll try then to summarize some of the comments from some of the folks
Okay,
who may be speaking, maybe more efficient that way.
that'd be fine, thank you.
Good evening. I'm Carol Scott, 38 San Carlos Drive in the Hammock. Mike Goodman, Planning Board member, is on vacation, and in order to get his main points of major concerns read into the public record, I'm going to read just portions of his letter that he sent to you. His entire letter is in the backup materials for this meeting, and here is the letter. We are on the right track with a tiered approach because marinas are not one size fits all. Nevertheless, more work is required before a recommendation is made to the Commission. The Tier 2 and 3 marinas should be compatible with surrounding uses. Some marinas are small and serve residential uses or are necessary to commercial uses, such as restaurants. These marinas are suitable for areas adjacent to residential uses. Marinas are more industrial in nature, should be separated from residential areas. Any marina that provides more than nominal covered storage should be compatible with residential areas. Separate, though, and should not be allowed in sensitive areas like a hammock. Tier 2 and 3 marina wording does not contain enough guidance to protect surrounding residential areas. The hammock has areas where the C2 zoning district is located right next to residences and land suitable for residential development. The proposed revision does not limit hours of operation for a marina. The intensity of a marina, especially one that provides dry boat storage, is simply not compatible and adjacent residential uses. The noise, odors, and increased traffic will at best be a nuisance to surrounding residences. These types of marinas should be prohibited use for the A1A scenic corridor overlay and should be allowed only as a special exception use, permitted only within a reasonable distance from residential areas. A separation of at least 1/4 mile would be appropriate. My biggest concern is the risk of fire. It is not prudent to recommend any change to the code until this thoroughly researching should be done. This should start with a presentation of staff of the fire protection standard of marinas and boatyards set forth in NFPA 303 and other relevant sources. A dry boat storage facility is essentially a fuel depot with boats stored with fuel in their tanks. This poses a significant risk of major fire. We should also require large enough setbacks so a ladder truck can access all sides of any dry boat storage building. We need to make sure dry boat storage facilities are safe for the public and for first responders. Thank you for considering my concerns in my absence. Mike Goodman. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Donna Richardson-Drivenalk, and I live at 6 Ocean Vista Lane in the Hammock. And I have been a member of Scenic A1A since its beginning, but I am here as a caring resident of the Hammock. I would like to point out that at this particular proposed location, the west side of the Intercoastal is remarkably close to the east side, and there is not very much space for any kind of marina that should be required to service the intense number of boats incoming and outgoing. Maybe they will have to book specific times of arrival and departure, like a busy airport. I believe it is a travesty to allow this proposed huge industrial facility, which under any name will be so very invasive to the single-family dwellings surrounding it. I can't imagine that any one of you would like to be living next door to this proposal. You really need to know exactly what you are facilitating here by changing the name from warehouse to marina, especially if the property has insufficient waterfront space for a large marina requirement. I thank you for your time.
Good evening. Is this it? This one? Okay. My name's Joyce Scaff. I live at 5648 North Ocean Shore Boulevard. The scenic A1A corridor overlay states the following. The purpose of the A1A scenic corridor overlay district is to protect and enhance the natural and man-made environment of this unique and special portion of Flagler County, thereby preserving quality of life and property values within the corridor. This is very distracting, by the way, to somebody that's up here. That's all distracting. A parcel at 5954 North Ocean Shore Boulevard along the river in the Hammock is for sale. It is zoned RC and residential. The realtor's description says this: amazing views and protected conservation land across the intercoastal. Enjoy spectacular sunsets and intercoastal wildlife from your own backyard. What it doesn't say is that the adjacent property to the north has a single-family home and 300 feet on the river, and it is zoned C2, where boat warehouses will be allowed. I wonder if potential buyers know about the C2 zoning, or that a marina could be built next to them if a developer buys the property. That lovely description about sunsets, wildlife, and conservation land across the intercoastal could very well apply to the property where I live. A C2 property is near my home, and yes, I was aware of that when buying the property in 2016 and built a home. But I never thought that a warehouse storing boats containing fuel, a noisy forklift, and a huge gasoline tank could be 100 feet from my property. This marina amendment, as written, will allow that to happen. How does that preserve quality of life and property value? Flagler's land code also includes this, 3.0101, which describes the purpose for having zoning districts. It says, providing residential environment free of incompatible uses, safe from natural and man-made hazards. And number 7, maintaining and improving the quality of life for all residents. Need I say more? Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Alicia Selden. I live at Hammock Dunes. I was born and raised in New York City, so please excuse me if I'm a little blunt. But a pig is a pig no matter how much lipstick and perfume you want to put on it. We're not stupid. We know why this is being done. And if this is going to be done, just do it and let us not hold these meetings. So we know that a warehouse being called a marina, especially where it's located, is inane. And it amazes me how people can think that we can't reason this out. As I said, I live in Hammock Dunes. I belong to Women's Club and a Bible class. I've spoken to at least 50 women who are very politically savvy, and none of them are happy, and they are all good voters. The other thing is that we've seen what a debacle politically has been in the last couple of weeks. By doing this and euphemistically changing the definition of warehouse to a marina, what contingency plans do you all have? Should we have another things like this? You all are setting precedent. The other thing is I'm sure there isn't, because unfortunately, I don't know any of you, but I will know you from now on. I hope there's no conflict of interest. Contractors, loans, wives talking, children playing, or whatever to cause this. Thank you for your time. That's all I've had to say. But again, a pig is a pig no matter how you want to dress it. And we are not stupid. We know why this is being done. If you want to call it a marina, we know it's a warehouse, for all the reasons that have been stated: fuel, fire, surrounding businesses, and as I said, people at Hammock Dunes are not happy about this. Thank you very much for your time.
Good evening. Thank you for your service. My name is Dennis Clark, 5784 North Ocean Shore Boulevard in the Hammock. This is a little bit repetitive, but let's be honest. This amendment is a thinly veiled attempt to approve a single massive boat warehouse in a specific location. Publix Supermarket agreed to limit their building size to half of what they initially wanted in order to abide by scenic corridor guidelines. Why shouldn't that be a requirement for so-called marinas, say 27,000 square feet or less? Look at the other recommended requirements that other districts are using that are not included in our amendment. I'll give you just 3. How can we allow a marina to be within 100 feet of a channel with no speed limit? You can surf on the wakes that are generated many times a day. You may or may not know that the floating kayak launch outside of the cove at Bing's Landing was removed immediately after a young man was thrown from it as a result of a boat wake. Why are the parking requirements less than Palm Coast and Volusia County? How can we allow an industrial forklift to operate next to residential at any time of the day or night? This amendment is just not ready for adoption, and it will have undesirable consequences if adopted as is. So please consider the other recommendations that have been submitted. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Better. My name is Elaine Bird. I live in Hammock Dunes. And as Mike Goodman said, that there's really not enough guidance, not enough detail in what's been presented by staff on a couple of very important areas, one of which is parking in terms of off-street and inside the designated area. As you know, we have had problems with parking issues along A1A. No matter what kind of a business has been put there, there's never enough parking. And we for sure don't want the kind of off-street parking like there is at Bing's Landing on weekends. You know, it's just lined up all along A1A. We don't want that to be in front of these houses that are right there, for sure. Another area that I think is really important, of course, is the whole sound issue. And there isn't anything specified in there to say that it needs to be the quack quack device or whatever needs to be designated to make it much more quiet. There's nothing in there that talks about boat washing. There's nothing in there that talks about a fence around the storage tank. There's nothing in there that talks about the size of the gasoline tank. There's nothing that talks about or delineates sales, repairs, rentals, and nothing about how the land and the parking area is going to be used when maybe there's a restaurant there, when emergency vehicles come, when people have their trailer and their boat and their car trying to come in. So I think there's a lot of areas that need to be looked at again and again have more detail in this, because there really isn't much. And for instance, just look at Palm Coast and there's lots of detail. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jody Bollinger. I live at 5654 North Ocean Shore Boulevard. I was doing some research on boat storage facilities, and so I decided to gather some information by looking at property appraiser websites. So I looked at 10 counties up and down the eastern seaboard of Florida. As I looked at them, most of them on the building card had warehouse for the building use, the building card. So I was curious about that. So I emailed Brevard and St. Johns County property appraisers and asked why warehouse is used for boat storage facilities. I received these responses from Brevard County. The boat storage building that you are referring to is a large, approximately 40,000 square foot warehouse building with a small amount of office space attached, which is fairly typical of a warehouse. As such, we have coded the building as a use code 4800 warehouse. The use code of the building reflects the type of structure and the associated construction costs to build such a facility. Essentially, it is a big warehouse with racks placed inside that are used to store boats. St. Johns County responded this way. I understand you have been doing research on boat storage facilities. The Department of Revenue provides codes for both the property and the different types of buildings that are on a particular site. These building codes are mainly for construction and building use. Take, for example, Cat's Paw. This building is a 4801 code, warehouse type, steel beams with light metal walls and roof. The St. Augustine Shipyard has a DOR code of 4810. This is a warehouse type that has flex space. The flex part of this building is constructed the same as the warehouse portion, but the flex portion has many uses. Dry stack boat storage is taxed as a warehouse because it's constructed like a warehouse and it functions as a warehouse. Although the Marina Amendment defines dry stack storage as a marina, the building itself is a warehouse. Since commercial warehouses are a prohibited use in the A1A scenic corridor, it seems logical that boat warehouses, which are commercial operations, should also be prohibited in the A1A scenic corridor. Both of these buildings, commercial warehouses and boat warehouses, are hulking structures, and they are not compatible with the area. Thank you very much.
My name is Jennifer Pickett. I live at 38 Atlantic Drive in the Hammock. I'm here because I am deeply disappointed that I just recently moved here, and I could have moved anywhere in Florida. I'm from North Carolina. I could have moved anywhere in Florida. I picked the Hammock simply because of scenic A1A. That is the sole reason that I picked this area, that it was quaint, it was not overgrown with commercial buildings, it was nostalgic, it was beautiful. It's called scenic for a reason. There is nothing scenic about what is being proposed for this area. It steals everything from such a quaint area that people love. People bike, people walk, people love the hometown feel of this area. And I am very passionate about that coming from a quaint area in North Carolina. Scenic defines this part of A1A. It is extremely important to keep that, to not lose that. Look at what's happening in town in Palm Coast and the traffic and how people are moving into this area, and it's not the quaint town that it once was. The other thing is, just as a technical issue, simply define marina. I know y'all are working on definitions and we're talking about all those different things that have to be worked out, but A marina typically has a cove. A marina typically has boat slips. A marina typically is a very, very active area. If there's no cove, how can it be defined a marina? And there's not enough room for that type of traffic there. And you steal everything that is beautiful about that area. Thank you.
Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for your service. I'm John Russell, 5652 North Ocean Shore Boulevard. Same location, 50 years. There's always been activity in the hammock. And we built our hardware store 40 years ago when there was nothing there. We couldn't do that today. Newcastle Marine came in and put up that beautiful building and went to work. I lost my homeowner's insurance. They could have a fire next door. I am paying a premium price for the hardware store. And now you want to put a marina next door with all those fuel tanks. And what is that going to do to the insurance on my store? Is that going to cancel the insurance on people either side of me also? Has anybody thought anything about any of this? Are we just going to blindly go ahead and, because we build these structures everywhere else, they're just not compatible everywhere. Please, think about what you're doing. Because if you do it wrong, it's there forever. If you keep it like it is, it'll be there forever. Thank you.
Hello, thanks for the opportunity here. My name's Thomas Gallagher, live at 34 Cherokee Avenue in the hammock. I just want to say that the thoughts on this possible proposed exemption concerning the boat marina structure on A1A, as these other people have indicated, my understanding that the proposed structure exceeds the limits allowed on scenic A1A. That should be one provision to look at. Providing an exemption for one structure will certainly lead to others, builders, developers, and investors, to exceed those limits designed to keep A1A a scenic byway. I grew up in Daytona when it was still a two-lane road in Daytona, A1A was. It's not that anymore. And though our scenic A1A will certainly be replaced at some point by more building, we don't have to make it an unscenic A1A. I'm sure that there is a more suitable place for this marina boat dock to be built. Sometimes we as a community just need to leave things as they are. Development has already arrived in Flagler, like we all know, but some people just need to step up and preserve what the county still has. Thank you very much.
My name is Sherry Frazier, and I have been a property owner in Flagler County since 2003. I currently live in Canopy Walk. We came to this area because of my experience when I was in college at University of Florida, coming over to the beaches, to the beautiful area that it was. I believe that this has a unique environment that we all live in, and we need to preserve it. I think you have to look at the environment and the aesthetics of this area. It is a draw. We heard from one woman who's from New York specifically because of that. It's a major draw for a lot of people. It's the whole ambiance of old Florida. We don't see that very regularly across any of the coasts in Florida. We need to preserve that. Please think long and hard about what you're trying to do here, and we hope that you will make the right decision. Thank you.
Good evening. Dennis Bear on behalf of Hammock Civic Association. Of course, I'd always prefer to get the last word in after Mr. Millian speaks, but I just have one request. If he speaks last, please don't allow him to engage in the type of personal attacks that he's engaged in prior meetings that we've had with you all. I guess the good news is this is probably the last time you all have to talk about marinas for a while. I know it's been on your agenda quite a bit over the last 6 months, and it's a little frustrating because, Mark Langella, you and I talked about this early on. You told us to get engaged in the process. We spent hours going through ordinances from other jurisdictions. We came up with some fairly detailed proposals. We came up with some proposals, okay, this is how it would work in scenic A1A. Limited to the 30,000 square feet like Publix did. We came up with parking requirements. We came up with a host of other issues, but they've not been included in any of the drafts of the ordinance that you've seen. So it's a little frustrating when we go through it. And I know staff's busy and they don't have a lot of time to do ordinance development, but it's a little frustrating with the process. We've vacillated between quasi-judicial and quasi-legislative. You've heard the comments tonight that we know this isn't supposed to be about the marina, but it is about the marina because the marina got a use determination at the last meeting and they haven't proceeded on it because they had to go through a special exception. So my request is that a minimum, a special exception be required for a marina and a C2 designation that's either adjacent to residential or it's the scenic A1A overlay. And you already heard a lot of the reasons. What are the fire protection plans? What are the hours of operation? There's no other C2 designated use that has an exterior forklift that's going to be running 12 to 14 hours a day. You don't have anything in here about sound muffling requirements. That's why we think there need to be the additional buffer requirements that's in the text of what we've proposed. In the staff report, it specifically says, and I read it to you, this is on page 5, paragraph 2 of the staff report, the amendment will serve to protect the health and safety of residents in the area and will be complementary to the use of adjacent properties or the general neighborhood. The ordinance as written right now lacks that degree. It's not debatable at all. It lacks that degree of protection. So we think that it needs some additional work. And again, we've spent the time to come up with some additional language. Fueling services or fueling operations are clearly a service that is prohibited under your scenic A1A overlay. But there's no discussion of the interaction between this proposed amendment and the scenic A1A overlay designations. So it needs some detail as to deal with those issues. We've came up with very specific parking requirements. One parking place per 3 wet slips and dry slips. That's consistent with what Volusia County has. That's consistent with what Palm Coast has. 2 parking places for charters. You got somebody that's running inshore charters. I don't think you'll see any offshore charters here. They need 2 spaces, one for the captain and one for the customers. I think that's a realistic use. The other issue is ancillary uses or other commercial uses on the property. If they've got a restaurant that's not just like takeout, like the Caribbean Jacks where I used to keep my boat up in Daytona, they got a little ship store there. You can grab a sandwich, you can grab a cold beer or water or whatever and go with it. But they don't have a full-blown restaurant that's part of the dry boat storage. So if you've got a full-blown restaurant that caters to the outside public, they should be required to meet those parking requirements for their operation, not as an ancillary use. That needs to be addressed in the ordinance, and I don't think that it is. So again, our position is you really need to have a special exception under those circumstances. You need to have a better detail on your fire protection requirements, your fuel containment, your washdown containment. There need to be some additional minimum standards like you see in a lot of other jurisdictions. We've given you the language. It's there. It needs to be incorporated into this language. So of what's being proposed. I think Mike Goodman summarized it pretty well, but again, we have given you, I don't know how much time, I've got a minute left. We've given you some good language. If you look at what we've proposed as far as environmental issues, dealing with boat washing, dredging, and then specific requirements within the scenic A1A overlay. We ask that you consider those, recommend that they be incorporated in this ordinance when it goes to the Board of County Commissioners. Thank you very much.
Bob Million, 17 South Waterview, Palm Coast. I didn't come to address a specific marina. I came to speak on the marina amendment. I handed out two things. One was the first with the photographs on it. When Mr. Goodman put his letter into the packet and asked that it be included in the record, he also included a fire code from the city of Seattle as backup. It's in your packet. I've got a picture of what that refers to. These are floating docks with a roof over them. You know, it's not a dry storage, it's not a marina. Marina fire codes are within NFPA 303 and FPA 13, Chapter 12, very clear. So all of these things exist. I have 4 comments, and they're very short, but they're detailed in my information. I'd be more than happy to answer questions. My first comment is that the parking should be revised. The example, a Tier 2 marina, okay, that's the middle group of marinas. You're allowed commercial fishing, charter, shipping, sales. You have 1 boat slip. Doesn't make sense. Okay, most of the land development codes define parking by boat slip. And I've got a category down there which I made a recommendation. I do agree with Mr. Bear that any ancillary use should be parked independently. I mean, it's clear in the code. So parking is the first thing. Second thing I want to question is the dock setback with compared to a side yard setback. Doesn't specify whether it's a building side yard setback or a landscaping side yard setback. But my point is, and again, if you read farther down, this is regulated by FDEP. These are sovereign lands, okay? You're required to set your dock, if your lot is 65 feet or wider, you're required to set your dock back 25 feet from the opposing property. So we're regulating things that are already regulated. We've got a national fire code. We've got a national code on fueling. We've got a national code on the size of the docks and the location of docks. Okay, and there's no reason to have something that conflicts with a national code. The other thing is that boat service is excluded from marinas in general. So any service would be approved by the Planning and Development Board, which means that if I've got a marina someplace and I want to wash my boat, I've got to come to you guys and say, can I wash my boat? So again, it is normal to differentiate between a boatyard and a marina. A boatyard does industrial type work, major repairs. A marina is very limited in repairs. Most of the land development codes have that in there. The final thing is that the county spent a lot of money in 2016 to develop the Manatee Protection Plan. There are definitions in there, and I've included them in your packet. What is a marina? What is a dry boat facility? You know, all of these things we're discussing have had definitions in the county since 2016. So my question is, why are we rewriting what we've already agreed to in 2016? So you have the current code defines a boat slip as something above a column of water. Okay, now there's going to be an impact fee on boat slips pretty soon. So I'm assuming that if I've got a dry slip and it's not over a column of water, my definition is I don't have an impact fee on it. You see what I'm saying? They're not, the definitions don't coincide. They're not compatible. You've got room to argue about it. And so you've already defined it. Why don't we use those definitions? So details on what I've said are in here. Be more than happy to answer any questions. But I recommend that you approve the amendment with these 4 changes. Thank you.
Greg Blasset, President and CEO of the Palm Coast Flagler Regional Chamber. I've been up here a few times talking about the parking requirements. I don't even know how many months we've been at this for the LDC amendment, not a specific project. So wanted to come up here and just state, number one, the Chamber's interest in this is obvious, but just to spell it out, boating is increasing. And there's an increasing demand in our county for people wanting to use the waterways. And so when I started to engage companies captains, other marinas, retail facilities that provide services to boats and that marine industry, they all started sharing with me a lot of things. And one of them that did come up was when we were talking about the future of marina development. And they all agree that we should have some sort of definition of what a marina is, that they wanted to make sure that the parking was really a key issue because it's caused so many problems in other places. And so tonight, what I'd like to share with you is the recommendation that for wet slips, we reduce the parking requirement to 1 parking space per 2 wet slips, and for dry slips, 1 parking space per 6 dry slips. Additionally, the comments that Mr. Millian made about duplicating what's already being regulated does concern me. I think we need to be careful about not having duplicate regulations if somebody else is already writing the rules at the state level. And that's a big conversation that's happening at the state, is making sure that, you know, what's being regulated is not being superseded by the local government. So I think that's worth looking into, is looking at, you know, if DEP is writing rules for this, if the manatee protection plan for the state is saying that. So that is worth checking out. And then the other side of it is the boatyard versus a marina. It seems like that's a lot of what the concerns are. So maybe it makes sense to have a separate definition for a boatyard versus a marina. So with that having been said, appreciate your time. That's it. Thank you.
Any more public comment or discussion? Mr. Langello.
Thank you. First of all, I appreciate everybody coming up and speaking your mind. I heard some things that I heard before, reiterated some of the things that I had believed that we should do. There's a balancing act here, if you ask me. People are asking to protect the environment and protect the look of the hammock in particular. And at the same vein, we also have to, we talked about the people are moving here, and that's the reason why they're coming here, but when they come here, they want amenities. So this can't be, this community cannot be the same community it was when I first came here 41 years ago, where Mr. Russell, I'm sure, remembers there wasn't hardly anything up in the hammock. But after saying that, we still need to make protections to keep what we can keep. So to that vein, that's why I thought we should have the special exception, Adam, to this, because whether it's in particular areas, as Mr. Bear said, or just across the board, I think there's a lot of peculiarities to the marina that we may or may not have flushed out in this ordinance until maybe we feel like we got it flushed out. It would give both staff and give a board the opportunity to maybe put additional restrictions or take some away. Maybe make something fit where it's not fitting just by the definition. So I would encourage that we leave the special exception as a requirement that could be a safeguard to some of the things people were talking about. I think I have the same concern, as you know, about if there is a fire code, we don't need to have our own fire code, let the fire code take over. As you and I discussed, though, there are some areas, perhaps when it came to navigable waters, that maybe don't fit into that. We may have some areas, not necessarily in the hammock, but in other areas that may not fit into those definitions. So, I still think there's still a little bit of refinement that we could possibly do with the definition. And Mr. Million's thought of looking more at that manatee protection definition may not hurt to look again at it when you take it from here. I thought there was definitely some good comments about parking all the way around. The trade-off to the parking is if you, Mr. Million was talking about increasing parking spaces. So if there's a charter boat, and right now the code is not even allowing for enough spaces for all the customers who can pull up to that parking boat. So he's actually asking to increase the amount of parking from what you called out in here. Again, special exception may be able to do that, but at least we can look at it and, where the use may also dictate, at least that phraseology, so that in a special exception environment, that would alert you to look at how many spaces we're looking for in a particular spot. But the trade-off is, so it's a boat, and you're going to put 50 more parking spaces in there. Well, every one of these parking spaces create an environmental effect that we don't want. So do we have enough parking spaces for every possible scenario on that property 365 days a year? Or will there be a few days, New Year's Day or whatever, everyone's out boating or whatever, and that there is an excess of parking? So what is the right amount? And again, I think the trade-off would be, back in a special exception, you could look at the parcel, look at the surrounding area, see how it fits. So for a lot of the reasons that people were already talking about, I think the special exception would allow us to review stuff as it comes up that you can handle on a case-by-case basis, that a one-size-fits-all definition here may not, be right. And again, Mr. Bear said it too, I encourage people, despite whether or not we may or may not agree, I still enjoy the conversation to hear what you guys think. A lot of you guys were still relating this ordinance to a particular property, and while it relates to that property, it relates to every other property involved, and that's what we're hearing tonight. We're not doing a site plan for any particular property. And when that property comes up for a site plan, then that's when that will be reviewed. But in general, I think that, Adam, I think you did a great job. I just think you could probably use a little more refinement, and I don't know if that means coming back to us, or just when you go to them, just take some of these comments that you heard tonight. And again, I think that the special exception is an important aspect. When we approved the other item, we put a special exception on it. And to me, I know Jack had asked why we're doing it, and my thought was this, is that there's too many variables that may come up, and there's one more layer of review. It allows both the public and this board to review things where if it's just in black and white, there is no more saying. We don't have a say. We have to allow whatever it said, and it may not fit. So that was why I thought at least at the minimum, the special exception and looking at the parking. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Langelo. Any other comments?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Adam, there's been this roundabout discussion on the parking issue, and specifically the parking issue as it relates to ancillary uses. So I've been working under a assumption that if an ancillary use, a restaurant, for instance, or a convenience store, or a bait shop, or anything that might be an ancillary use to the marina itself, that would trigger a separate set of regulations that apply to that ancillary use, and that the property owner or developer couldn't say, well, we're a marina, so you only count parking spaces by the number of boat slips we have, and we can do whatever else we want in here as long as we can find space for it. Am I misguided in that? If they want to do a restaurant, does that trigger the restaurant parking criteria or not?
Yeah, that's one of the items that kind of surprised me about what Mr. Baird said, because as I recall in July, I had that language in there that said, oh, no, there's something different for ancillary. And then I took that out as a result of the public comment that came up in July. And so in the August iteration you had, it's been removed because, that way the restaurant requirement kicks in. We already have a requirement for restaurants. And so if you put a restaurant into your marina, then you have the parking requirements that go with the restaurant. Same as we've done since the beginning of time. Since 1991, we've implemented this by saying a use is a use. And so the use generates, it's a sum of the parts. And so, yes, the first iteration of this in July did say that there was something different. If you had ancillary, here's a special asterisk that's here that, your ship store or whatever it was would not have that same stuff that's in the code. I took it out as a result of the public comment. I'm a little surprised because that was something that directly came from the public comment that was made in July. So you're exactly right, that if you want to put in a restaurant now, then the restaurant is the number of employees on the shift plus the factor for the seating. And so that's how we determine the parking for the restaurant. And then along with that then would be the marina parking. And then along with that would be the store parking. If they have some ship store, it's retail. It's 1 per 200. And so we're going to add all that up together, and that's going to give us our minimum. And make sure I emphasize that to everybody. Minimum parking requirements. And so we've said it before in our code. It certainly can provide more. Maybe they want to from a business standpoint, but our code is always tied to a minimum off-street parking requirement.
Right, okay. And when we talk in the ordinance, it speaks to an enclosed building for boat dry storage. I'm curious as to what that looks like. Every building that enclosed dry storage for boats that I've ever seen was three-sided. And there was an open side to get in and out of the slips. Are you anticipating that there will be a doorway and then it literally be a four-walled enclosed structure? Is that what we're proposing here?
I'm looking here under definitions. I'm sorry, where is it under, I'm trying to find it here, so I was nodding, but I'm not
Back.
sure.
Excuse me.
If I can, Mr. Connor, the one thing I wanted to, just to,
Section 2.
Mr. Connor? Mr. Connor? I don't get him.
Mr. Connor, Mr. Langella has a comment.
I just wanted to, as somebody in the building trade,
Enclosed buildings.
a three-sided building is far more vulnerable to storm than a building you can close a door in. And so to try to limit it, in my own opinion, if you try to limit it to have these buildings opened up, it may be more of a safety issue, objects in the building and whatever. So I don't know if looking at a three-sided building and making that a requirement would be something we have
Yeah,
to do.
and I'm not opposed to it being an enclosed structure. I was just trying to get some clarification on the issue. And I recognize the utility of having a building that is enclosed, because then you don't have the wind lift that you would have with a structure that had an open side. So I get that.
And I got it here, it's CF2, I think is wherever it is. Dry boat storage shall be contained within fully enclosed buildings, not including the space needed for forklifts to load the racks. I was thinking of a specific one that I know of that has actual roll-up doors on it, and you can roll up the doors on both sides to create airflow while you're there doing your stuff, and you can take them down. I like fully enclosed because fully enclosed also helps with noise abatement. I also like it because from a fire standpoint, it actually, I believe, helps you on your fire attenuation. And again, we talked enough about that. It's going to meet the fire code. I don't have to say that it has to meet the fire code because it has to meet the fire code. So I don't have to say that in zoning that it has to meet the fire code because it has to meet the fire code. It's like meeting the building code. I don't have to say in zoning it has to meet the building code because it has to meet the building code.
Right.
It's,
Right. Cool.
it's, okay, do we have to meet OSHA requirements? Yes. Do I have to put that in zoning?
Yeah, I
No.
guess what I'm
And so
getting
fully
at here
enclosed
is-
would be four walls and a roof.
Right, and I guess what I'm getting at to here is, again, and I think I expressed this, I wasn't at the last meeting, but I was at the meeting before, and I talked about how if you run the calculations, parking ultimately is going to limit what you can do on a given parcel,
It will.
depending on the uses that you attempt to impose on that parcel. If we follow this language in the ordinance where we're requiring an enclosed building, and then we've got to have, by design, an entryway for the forklift, sufficient room inside the building for the forklift to turn and maneuver to remove boats from the rack. And so we're further limiting what you can do within a given space in terms of the number of boat slips, because you got to have room to get them in and out. You can't just put the slips in there and not have room to get them in and out. That doesn't do you any good. And so I think those protections, it appears to me, are in place. By my count, we're at the third or fourth meeting on this. My recollection is this board decided that marinas were appropriate in C2 some time ago. We got challenged, or the county got challenged in court on that. The court, I thought, directed us to come back and spend some time putting an ordinance together so that we would have some specificity as to what we were talking about. We've now in our fourth meeting getting there, and I'm hearing from both sides of the equation here that they're not happy with the ordinance that we've come up with. So I'm wondering if we haven't hit the middle on that.
I'd say we're there if we got everybody mad, so that's perfect.
I am concerned about the noise requirement.
Yes, sir.
Because I think that particularly if we were to locate, we don't dictate where the C2 zoning already exists. We're only on a board to make decisions regarding where C2 zoning might be located in the future. And so we have to live with the C2 that we already have. That being a reality, there are some places where C2 zoning perhaps is located too close to residential areas or too close to sensitive areas. And I agree with Mr. Langello that it would seem to me that noise abatement, additional buffers, things to screening and fencing that might be enhanced to protect a particular environment from a C2 use, such as a marina, would be better managed if this was a special exception to C2 rather than primary use. And so I'm in agreement that special exception probably is the way to go. I read in the staff comments, it's a long-winded way to get to my question. I read in the staff comments that it was originally anticipated as a special exception, and then we pulled it because there wasn't a specific recommendation. Do we need to make a specific recommendation tonight to make it special exception as it goes to the BOCC?
Well, you did that as part of the determination of use, so arguably, okay, maybe you did that already, but then when we considered the ordinance as the next item, I presented it didn't have that in there, and the direction then was go forth and prepare this with the change, I think, to overnight, and that was about it. And so that I'm a bit frustrated at my spot here, and I get what others are saying, is that we keep saying these things to you and to staff, and why aren't you doing these changes? Please, planning board, provide specific recommendations. If there's things that you've heard that are things that you want to be incorporated into this, do that. And I'll certainly put it in as I either bring it back to you or bring it to the Board of County Commissioners. You've received public comment. That is the role of the public to make their comments. We don't have to jump because somebody says jump. But I will encourage you, and you have done that. You've listened attentively. You've heard what's been said. If you have things that you want to have incorporated into this, please do provide that back to us in your recommendation. And so I'm hearing you loud and clear that there was some intent with that it wasn't just in the context of a determination of use. You want that special exception to follow forward into the C2. I'd ask then, are you talking about both Tier 2 and Tier 3? I think you are. But if you're going to make a distinction there and say, oh, no, we didn't mean that, we meant Tier 2 could be fine as a permitted, but Tier 3 would have to be special exception, do that, provide that recommendation forward as part of your action tonight.
Well, are you ready to entertain a motion then, Mr. Chair?
I'm ready if the board is, but I want to make sure that the comments we've discussed everything in order. If we have any more discussion to take place, I think we need to do that before we make any type of motion.
I just have,
Man, I can't just take questions from the public. We closed that.
trying to make heads or tails out of this parking, and it's confusing. But I do believe, from my experience, and I do go to a lot of marinas. I charter boats. I've owned a boat in the past, and up and down the East Coast. So I've been to a lot of them, and the ones with commercial vessels that take people out, they never have enough parking. I mean, 50 people show up to go on a boat. The marina's full, and but it, so that's a situation where depending on the type of use and what is happening at the marina makes a big difference. Other marinas don't have any commercial operations at all, so you don't have 50 cars showing up at one time. You just have the people there that maybe own a boat. It seems to me that I guess I got a lot of papers in front of me. I think this one is from Mr. Million, but parking should be based on the type of marina and slip plan, that's involved. How many wet slips are there? How many dry slips are there? Are there commercial operations or not? And that would seem to make sense rather than this one I'm reading. It just says 2 spaces for every commercial charter boat. That's not enough from my experience. It would have to be a lot more if there's a charter boat there. And if there isn't, then it wouldn't apply. But I think it depends a lot on the type of marina and what they plan to do there to determine how many parking spaces would be needed.
Mr. Chairman, if I could maybe help you with some of your direction. So you've heard parking discussed. You've heard special exception in some districts. You've also heard, I think particularly Mr. Bear talk about hours of operation, buffering. You know, I like those discussions when they're absent a specific location. I think those are appropriate. And so I think those may be on your table for you to think about. Ancillary uses, I think that if I could mention one that Mr. Million had said, you know, boat washing, if you think that's appropriate to do something with that. I think other comments may have been pushing more towards boat yard. You've heard something about fuel and fuel dispensing and, you know, again, sprinkler requirements. I don't think we have to get too deep into that because that's handled by other regulation unless you feel that that's appropriate for you to pull this out and make those considerations unique here. But to my thinking, parking, special exception, buffering, hours of operation, I think are probably safe for you to discuss and consider.
I mean, I agree with Mr. Langella in regards to the special exemptions in the Tier 2 and Tier 3 categories. Parking, Mr. O'Connor, I mean, you said it right in regards to, you know, it kind of takes care of itself, correct? I mean, I think we have a lot in place. I'm open to hearing a motion from the board. If we have one, let's go with it.
I'd make a motion that we move this piece of legislation forward and that we recommend it to the BOCC with a specific recommendation that it be passed as a special exception to the C2 district rather than as a primary use. But I think this needs to move along.
I would second that with I guess an amendment to your motion. I still think the items that Adam was just talking about, which we talked about to revisit the parking. I don't know enough of this stuff to sit here and try to figure out what is the right amount of parking. That's the problem I have, Adam, sitting on the board here. I don't know. I've only been to Marina a couple times my whole life, so Jack knows more about marinas than I do. Probably everyone else here knows more about marinas. So I hate to make a specific requirement, but I think, Adam, if you could, my own amendment to the process is if the parking could be looked at, again, where use is in play, and again, in a special exception situation where the determination could be made on a particular property. So again, you have something in place, but you may lessen it or increase it based on both the use and the particular parcel may be appropriate. I agree with people in the audience about noise. That should be looked at, again, under special exception. If special exception handles all that and then staff is able to do it, I don't have a problem with it. So at least the minimum would be to review the parking as far as use and how it would play into special exception.
I make that part of my motion, and in that same vein, I encourage staff to continue to work openly with Mr. Bear or whoever in terms of fine-tuning this as it works its way to the BOCC. I'm not committed to all the words exactly as they're printed on the page. If there's a better way of doing things and a better way of expressing ourselves. But I do think this legislation needs to move forward, so I'm ready to do that.
So we have a motion and a second to move this forward to the Board of County Commissioners.
Can I get a clarification on the motion for special exceptions? Is that tied to any tier or just every marina?
2 and 3.
2 and 3, correct?
Is what
Okay.
I think. I personally think that.
Correct.
Let me hear your motion, okay.
So, all right, so we have a motion.
Sorry, just one more clarification. And is that in any and all zoning districts, or is that just commercial?
Well,
what's your motion?
It's it's just for the C2.
Well, it would be Mr. Connor's choice at this point, but.
Right, we're talking about marinas. That marina use be a special exception use, not a primary use in the C2 district.
His motion is limiting it to C2. I don't have a problem with
Thank you.
Okay. So in review, we have a motion and a second to move this forward to the Board of County Commissioners.
I do have a discussion quickly, though, before you go to a vote.
Okay.
So I just wanted to reiterate one thing, too. As a special exception, and in the site plan process, some of the issues that people were concerned about, again, they talked about the storage tanks of fuel, talked about buffering and noises and stuff like that. All this is going to be handled on a case-by-case basis, both by staff and TRC, and then planning board, and then eventually the commission on any of these items. Would that be, I mean, there shouldn't be any of these that would be below the threshold, or am I wrong here, that they are going to have a review in front of the public at a marina, right?
As a special exception, it would come to the Planning and Development Board.
But
and
what about-
It would not
but-
go to the
but-
Board of County Commissioners.
What would trigger a site plan and a TRC review and public comment on a marina? I mean, wouldn't that automatically get that, have to come in front of there for approval anyway?
Site plan requirements, less than 5 acres, TRC 5 acres or greater, Planning and Development Board. And so that's independent of a special exception. That would be your site plan
So
thresholds.
if the site is below 5 acres on a marina, then they will not need a separate site plan review?
It would go through a site plan review, but would stop at staff level technical
Yeah.
review committee.
So that would not come to us during that point?
Correct.
And would there be, the TRC meetings are public?
They are. Yeah, public's invited. There's no mechanism for public comment. In the past, we've allowed public that's there on a topic to be able to provide comments, but it's a staff level technical review, and you've seen those results of those meetings. They're forwarded to the planning board. Just to be real clear, though, special exception, irregardless, if you make it a special exception, doesn't matter if it's 4 acres, 1 acre, 7 acres, it will come to this board. So a special exception comes
With
from
the site
planning board.
plan?
With it's primarily a site plan.
Right.
Yeah, when you look at the special exception criteria, they're refuse containers, they're lighting, it's
Right.
signage.
Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure, that even if it's below the 5 acres, we still get that site plan review.
If you specify special exception, it would come
That's what I
here.
thought. Okay, thank you.
All right, so our motion, once again, and a seconded motion to move this along to the Board of County Commissioners with the special exceptions being in place for C2, marina use, Tier 2 and 3.
And parking.
And parking, noise, fuel, all be part of the discussion for the special exception?
Yeah, but also that parking is also related to use.
Yes. Yes. All in favor? Well, I call the question, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Or nay? We have unanimous that this item is passed unanimously to go towards the Board of County Commissioners. Staff comments?
None, thank you.
Board comments? Public comments? Ma'am, I will have to have you step up to the podium.
My name is Alicia Selden. I live in Hammock Dunes.
Ma'am, yeah, I'm sorry, repeat that.
Thank you. My name is Alicia Selden. I live at Hammock Dunes. If you guys all decided this, why did you let us go through this show? If you all knew you were going to do this, why did you let us do this? And is there any way we can appeal this? If we get enough signatures, can we go to the Board of County Commissioners and stop this?
Mr. Chairman, I could probably handle that. This is going to the Board of County Commissioners.
Yes.
It's on, I said at the beginning of the meeting, October 4th at 9:30, and then October 18th at 5:30.
I see. How do we appeal this? Can we stop this?
Well, you're going to show up to the meeting, and you'll have your comment at that point.
Oh, comments won't do it. What do we have to do? Do we have to get signatures?
Staff?
Well,
can you answer
we
that?
can't provide you legal advice, but we can tell you that there will be a public hearing before the county commission in which comment will be solicited. You'll have 3 minutes each. But as far as challenging legally, you have to get legal advice.
Okay.
If I can, ma'am, there is a code, and in the code, it does spell out certain items. So if you want to actually, written sort of in plain English, so you can read it.
Good.
As
I need
the attorney
plain
says,
English.
we're not attorneys, and we can't represent you and tell you legally, but there are avenues for you to look at the code and see what the process is. And I would tell you, though, I know you don't believe it, there's no pre-made determination. We all don't communicate with each other before we come to this meeting. There is no an agenda behind the scenes. It may seem like that to you, and I apologize to you if you believe that, but we make decisions up here all the time. We're not paid. We're not elected. We're citizens just like you who are volunteering our time to do this, and we're trying to react in the way that each one of us that we think is right. And we're not trying to hurt you at all. We're just trying to do what we believe is
I
right.
have no doubt about that. And if I gave you that impression, that was not my impression. But it said in G, in hurricane preparations, that the marina has to make preparations and whatever for adjoining properties, of which this gentleman in Hammock Hardware. So the marina is going to have to make preparations in case of hurricanes to protect him. It said it in G, after the F, the G.
Yeah, I know.
Excuse me?
I know we can't really.
If the comments are about a specific item,
Right.
we've closed the public hearing, Mr. Chairman, so.
Okay.
I just may ask one thing. Since I'm-
Go right ahead.
Thank you. I did want to ask Mr. Langella or the board specifically about the noise, and maybe Mr. Mingle, because on the special exception, I know I looked at it one time, and there are like 9 things that are listed under special exception, and I guess I just want to make sure that if a marina in C2 is looked at as a special exception, that noise issue will be looked at, because I know those of us who live near C2 are concerned about noise, and so.
Ms.
Well-
Bellinger, can I make a recommendation?
Yes, sir.
That I don't think it's appropriate on this dais right now that we entertain your question because it's particular to something in particular. However, Mr. Mangle is always open. He will give you information. And when we close this agenda, if you want to talk to me, I have no problem because this has now cleared our agenda as far as I'm concerned, as long as we're not talking about a particular piece of property. I don't have
Sir,
a
I
problem.
wasn't.
Okay,
There
right.
are
So-
5
so-
C2 property owners.
Right, but just so we're not opening the hearing we just had.
No, sir.
So-
All I
so that's why I'm
all I
saying if-
wanted was a clarification about the
Right,
noise
and
issue.
Mr. Mangle he during office hours, he's very accessible and very free to talk. And again, when I walk off here, I'll let you know what I think. But I think to keep having a hearing about an item we just heard, which has got nothing to do with a particular site, it has to do with an ordinance.
Yes, sir.
It probably isn't appropriate. That's why I would rather just do it as a citizen and not on this board.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Motion to adjourn? Anyone?
Second.
Meeting adjourned.
That would have been fine.